Hey Lumineers, welcome back. Today we're breaking down the Amethyst Steel deck, also known as Purple Steel, one of the most talked about decks in the current meta, and honestly, also one of the most played. In this video, I will walk you through every stage of playing this deck, from your early game options to the exact cards you need to win, which cards you should mulligan at the start of your game, and of course, the deck's strength and weaknesses. This deck performs well against most meta decks and shines when you adjust your game plan based on what you're facing. I will show you exactly what you need to know and why Strength of a Raging Fire is one of the most important cards in the deck. Let's start with our early game options. In most matchups, you will play on the curve. A 1-drop on turn 1, a 2-drop on turn 2, and a 3-cost character on turn 3. From there, your goal is to build a board without overcommitting. We're playing the following cards in our early game: Captain Hook, Palace Guard, Rafiki, Calhoun, Black Heron, Cheshire Cat, Giant Cobra, Tinkerbell, and Lexington. Captain Hook is often your best 1-drop, especially when you're going second. With Challenger +2, he can take out almost any 1-drop, and many opponents will avoid exerting their characters after you play him. In many matchups, Hook isn't there to quest. He's there to control the board and protect your other characters. Palace Guard has 1 strength and 4 willpower, which means your opponent probably needs 2 characters to deal with him, or they have to wait until later in the game when they have songs or higher strength characters. However, if they have Fire the Cannons, your Palace Guard is done for. This is because of his Vanish ability, which means he can be banished by an action if your opponent targets him. So you might want to choose a different 1-drop if you know your opponent is playing Fire the Cannons. But many decks struggle to remove him early on, which makes Palace Guard perfect for keeping your board wide and for powering up Strength of a Raging Fire. Your last 1-drop can be adjusted depending on the decks you face often in your area. In this deck list, we run Rafiki, who is good against decks like Amethyst Steel and Sea Dogs because of his ability. On your turn, Rafiki gets Challenger +3, which lets him remove characters up to 3 willpower. If he doesn't work for you, you can replace him with Diablo, Olaf, or Royal Guards. Diablo can be good for card draw when he's banished, because you may draw a card. Olaf can be good to bounce characters back to your hand when he leaves play, and this can be helpful to repeat abilities from characters like Genie and Elsa. And Royal Guard is good against more challenge-heavy decks since you can easily buff him up due to cards like Genie, Hades, and Dog. Moving into the 2-cost slot, where we have Calhoun. She is one of your strongest 2-drops, especially when you're going first. With her 3 strength and 2 willpower and the ability Resist +1, she is hard to remove. And if she banishes a character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore. That extra lore might not seem like much, but over a few turns, it adds up fast and puts pressure on your opponent to deal with her. And let's not forget, she cannot be removed by cards like the Headless Horseman or Under the Sea. Black Heron is simple, but an effective card. You might be asking why a card without an ability is in the deck, but Black Heron has 3 strength and 3 willpower, which means she can do damage and take hits, especially good against decks that run a lot of low characters like Sea Dogs. Our 3-cost characters help stabilize the board. These cards help you remove mid-sized threats, protect your early characters, and sing Strength of a Raging Fire. Cheshire Cat is one of the biggest upgrades this deck received in Whispers in the Well. On its own, it's already a solid card with 3 strength and 4 willpower, but its real power comes from its boost ability. Once per turn, you pay 2 ink to put the top card of your deck face down under Cheshire Cat. Every time you do, you can move up to 2 damage counters from one character to an opposing character. This makes Cheshire Cat a double threat. You can either reflect their challenges back at them, the next turn of course, or use him to take out multiple characters by attacking one and moving damage around. Just remember, people will try to remove him, so be smart about when to exert him and when to keep him ready. Giant Cobra is another extremely annoying card for your opponent to deal with. With 4 strength and 4 willpower for only 3 cost, it's difficult to remove. Not to mention, when you play Giant Cobra, you can discard a card to gain 2 lore. That means Giant Cobra isn't just good at removing characters, but it can also take the game by surprise. Just like Palace Guard, Giant Cobra is fantastic at staying in play and helping you maintain a whiteboard for Strength of a Raging Fire. Lexington is great with 4 strength and 4 willpower, making him great at challenging opposing characters. He's able to remove important characters like Tiana, Cinderella, and Cheshire Cat in one hit. His alert ability lets him challenge evasive characters, which gives him a lot of flexibility in combat to also remove characters like Dumbo and Genie. The downside, though, is the other ability. If you have 3 or more cards in hand, Lexington cannot ready. That means you need to be very aware of your hand size when you play him. He's at his best in situations where your hand is already low. Tinkerbell is just like Rafiki, a more situational 3-drop. With evasive and 2 lore, she can sneak in lore against decks that struggle to interact with evasive characters. In this meta, she works extremely well against decks like Sapphire Steel that don't run many evasive characters. But with 1 strength, she is also at risk for decks that run Under the Sea or the Headless Horseman. Depending on your local meta, you can also choose to remove her from the list and opt for Elsa, Genie, or the White Rose. Elsa is great for getting extra card draw, Genie can be another threat to handle evasive characters, and the White Rose can be good in the end of the game to sneak in extra lore. Plus, with 3 strength and 3 willpower, she's not bad to have on the board either. So between your 1, 2, and the 3 cost characters, your early game is all about building a whiteboard without giving your opponent good trades. Now, let's talk about what we need to do after we played our first 3 turns. The mid-game is all about creating card advantage and control. This is the phase where many decks start running out of gas, and this deck does the exact opposite. We're going to add more characters to the board to draw cards and to have them protect our board and remove our opponent's characters. We're playing the following cards in our mid-game: Genie, Dumbo, Doc, Elsa, Iago, Strength of a Raging Fire, and he hurled his Thunderbolt. Genie is one of your best turn 4 plays. He's evasive, draws a card, when he enters play of course, and quests for 2 lore. In many matchups, Genie forces your opponent into an awkward position. If they ignore him, he keeps generating lore. If they try to deal with him, they often have to play an action, sing songs, or challenge with multiple characters. His downside shows up against decks like Emerald Sapphire. These decks run Under the Sea and Clarabelle. With 2 strength, your opponent can remove Genie from the board by singing Under the Sea, and most of the time when you play Genie, they're ready for their shift, giving them even more cards as a result. And keep in mind, Ember can drop the Horseman Strikes as early as turn 3. Dumbo is one of the most powerful mid-game cards in the deck. Not only can he exert to draw a card and gain a lore, but he also gives that same ability to all of your other evasive characters. Once Dumbo is on the board, your evasive characters start becoming real draw engines, giving you cards while gaining 1 lore, something that your opponent cannot ignore. Then we have Doc. This uninkable 2-drop is a card you don't want to play too early, because when he's played, you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards, which is great if you don't have any cards in hand, which is perfect in the mid-game when your hand is running low. Doc helps you find key cards like Strength of a Raging Fire, Dumbo, or Genie right when you need them. Alongside your draw characters, the mid-game is also where you start your control over the board. Elsa is a massive tempo card. When you play her, you exert an opposing character, and thanks to Rush, she can immediately challenge the turn she comes down. She is perfect for exerting characters that your opponent doesn't want to exert, removing key threats while developing your board. Iago is especially strong in the mid-game with 4 strength and 6 willpower. This card is extremely hard to deal with if you don't have any actions or evasive characters that deal with him. Many opponents are forced to either ignore him or waste valuable resources trying to deal with him. Both options work in your favor. Then we have Strength of a Raging Fire, one of the key cards of this deck. Because you've spent the early game building a whiteboard, this card often deals 4, 5 or even more damage just for 3 ink. It lets you remove large threats while keeping your characters alive. A key mistake players make here is playing Strength of a Raging Fire too early. Sometimes it's smarter to hold off a turn, play another character, and then cast Strength of a Raging Fire to make sure you get the removal. While Strength of a Raging Fire is the centerpiece of this deck, He Hurled His Thunderbolt fills in an important supporting role. For 4 ink, it deals 4 damage to a chosen character. This card is great as a backup removal when the board is getting out of control and you need an answer now. It can be helpful in situations where you don't have a wide board for Strength of the Raging Fire, or if you need to remove a specific threat immediately. During the mid-game, you constantly need to ask yourself one question. Do I need more cards, or do I need more board control? If your hand is low, prioritize Genie, Dumbo, or Dog. If your opponent is going wide or has a big threat, go for cards like Strength of a Raging Fire, He Hurled His Thunderbolt, Iago, or Elsa. If you're ahead, force your opponent to make the first move. By the time you reach the late game, Purple Steel is usually ahead on either cards, board presence, or both, at least if the game is going according to plan. We're playing the following cards in our late game: Hades and Demona. Hades is one of your most important cards in the late game. When you play Hades, you can choose an opposing character. If you do, you draw 2 cards, unless your opponent puts that character on the bottom of their deck. At this stage of the game, most opponents don't want to lose their board characters, which lets you draw 2 cards, which is great to provide you more options. Hades is especially powerful when both players are low on cards. In those situations, 2 extra draws can be the difference between winning and losing. Demona is your true finisher. When she enters play, she exerts all opposing characters, making it easy to challenge their whole board. She's perfect for resetting the board when your opponent is about to gain control. In addition, she lets each player with fewer than 3 cards in hand draw up to 3 cards, which can be helpful for you to close out the game. With 5 strength and 6 willpower and 2 lore, she is hard to remove and provides a lot of endgame value. One of the biggest mistakes players make in the late game is trying to rush the finish. With Purple Steel, you don't need to overcommit. If you're ahead, slow the game down. Quest when it's safe, force your opponent to act first. Now that you know which cards are in the deck and when they are played, we need to look at the strategy on how you should be playing this deck against different opponents, because Purple Steel can be played in multiple ways. One thing is for sure, in every matchup, this deck isn't trying to rush to 20 lore. Instead, your goal is to build your board and focus on card draw, which works well with our curve and our character's abilities. So in general, Purple Steel has the following strategy. You want to play on the curve at the beginning. You start by playing a 1-drop, then a 2-drop on the next turn, and a 3-cost character on turn 3. During those turns, you generally avoid interacting too much with your opponent's board, because your goal is to play a Genie on turn 4 and then use the Strength of a Raging Fire on that turn or the turns that follow. However, some decks require you to tweak that strategy a bit. Emerald Sapphire can be a more difficult matchup. The Genie strategy doesn't work well here. A lot of these decks play Under the Sea, and Genie tends to come down right when they're getting ready to shift Clarabelle. That usually gives them extra cards, so instead we want to apply early pressure and go wide with multiple 1-drops. Keeping Strength of a Raging Fire is important here to remove Clarabelle early, even if that means playing it on turn 3 instead of singing. Against Sapphire Steel, we want to focus on evasive characters. Most versions don't run many evasives themselves, so they often struggle to deal with them and are forced to spend their song cards instead. However, some recent lists are running Lexington or Ink Runner. Against the Ruby Amethyst match, choose Iago over Genie to avoid them playing the Headless Horseman. Same goes for Tinkerbell, choose Giant Cobra to avoid the Headless Horseman to disrupt their tempo. In Emerald Amber matchups, also known as Sea Dogs, we don't want to keep Strength of a Raging Fire in our opening hand. It will probably be taken away by either Ursula or Mowgli in their opening turns. Also, Genie isn't a keep against this deck. It will be removed by Under the Sea, plus it has only 2 strength. In this matchup, we're trying to develop our board constantly to keep up with their overgrowing board. We want to focus on playing 2 2-cost characters on turn 4 or a 3 and a 2-cost character on turn 5, while making sure our characters don't get removed by Under the Sea. Blurple is a bit of a tough matchup, since they have ramp and good card draw in their late game. Plus, they have cards to deal with your mid and late game. Some of them even play Spooky Side, where they can put all the characters with cost 3 or less into the player's inkwell face down and exerted, which could mean almost your whole board gone. For mirror matches, you really want to be going first, since that will give you a big advantage to gain control. You want to be the first one singing Strength of a Raging Fire and deny your opponent of playing it or make it less impactful when they play it. After removal songs have been played out, focus on getting card draw with cards like Genie and Dumbo, making sure you always have more options in your hands than your opponent. Alright, let's talk about Mulligans. A strong opening hand can make all the difference. I'll walk you through 3 hands and share what I would keep. In our first hand, we've got Captain Hook, Palace Guard, Cheshire Cat, Tinkerbell, Strength of a Raging Fire, Hades, and another Strength of a Raging Fire. This hand is actually pretty good already. We have a 1-drop, a 3-drop, and a song. We only have to look for our Genie. In this opening hand, I would mulligan Palace Guard, Hades, 1 Strength of a Raging Fire, and Tinkerbell. The reason I would mulligan one of the 3 cost cards is that we play many of them in the deck. High chances that I will draw another one. Cheshire Cat provides more value than Tinkerbell anyway, so only in a Sapphire Steel matchup I would consider keeping Tinkerbell. With these 4 mulligan options, I'm hoping to draw a 2-cost character and Genie or a Yago, depending on which deck I'm playing against. Also, our second hand is not bad at all. We've got Strength of a Raging Fire, Captain Hook, Genie, Black Heron, Demona, Hades, and Rafiki. We actually got everything we want except a 3-drop. We have either Captain Hook or Rafiki for our opening turn. We can play Black Heron on turn 2, and we have our Genie and Strength of a Raging Fire ready to go. I would only mulligan Demona and Hades for this hand. Our third hand is not good at all. We've got Dumbo, Doc, Black Heron, Cheshire Cat, Demona, Elsa, and Tinkerbell. We're not only missing our 1-drop, we also don't have a Genie or a Strength of a Raging Fire. I would keep our 2-cost Black Heron and mulligan the rest. Since we play so many 3-drops, there's no reason to keep them here. We want to have higher chances of getting Strength of a Raging Fire and Genie. Always keep in mind what you're up against. If you know your opponent's deck or you're heading into a second game, think about which cards you should prioritize based on their key threats. So now that we've covered every stage of the game, let's talk about what Amethyst Steel actually does well and where it can struggle. One of the biggest strengths of Purple Steel is how consistent it is. The curve is quite low, you have access to card draw in the mid-game and late game, and most hands are at least playable. You're rarely stuck doing nothing, which makes this deck very reliable. With a lot of 1, 2, and 3 cost characters, this deck is very good at early board control. Cards like Genie, Dumbo, Doc, Hades, and even Demona help you with having card advantage over your opponent. In longer game, this advantage adds up fast and often leaves your opponent top decking while you still have options. Between Strength of a Raging Fire, He Hurled His Thunderbolt, Elsa, and Cheshire Cat, you have answers to almost every board state. This deck is very good at making small and efficient trades. But of course, no deck is perfect and Amethyst Steel has its weak spots. This deck is not fast. Most of your characters only quest for 1 lore, and you don't have explosive finishers. If you rush your decisions, games can slip away even when you're ahead. Although some might disagree, this is somewhat of a high-skill deck. Small mistakes like playing a Strength of a Raging Fire too early, misusing Doc, or questing when you should hold back can snowball into a loss. This deck rewards good plays but punishes mistakes. The Purple Steel mirror often comes down to who gets to go first and who draws better cards. Once one player gets ahead, it can be very difficult to recover, making the matchup feel frustrating and sometimes out of your control. Decks like Blurple or Emerald Sapphire can generate card advantage in ways that are hard to keep up with. And that's going to wrap up my full breakdown of Amethyst Steel, also known as Purple Steel. Here is the full deck list. You will notice we run a lot of 1 and 3 drops, and overall the curve is very low. This deck might not win games in the most exciting way, but if you enjoy smart decisions and have patience, then this is one of the most rewarding decks to play in the current meta. Purple Steel has multiple versions in the meta, and if you want to experiment, there are a few options to consider for you. For example, the 1-drops I mentioned earlier in this video. In the end, they're all solid options. It just comes down to your personal playstyle and what is played in your local area. If you want to try the deck yourself, you can find the full list on Dreamborn. Just scan the QR code on the screen or check the link in the description. And that's it. If you enjoyed this guide, hit the like button, subscribe for more Lorcana content, and let me know in the comments which deck you are playing currently and which deck you would like to see next. Until next time, bye!